Hello, everybody. This is Leo Brady with AMovieGuy.com. I am really excited today to be with two extraordinary people, two people who have made a film that I thought was absolutely lovely. It's near and dear to my heart. I think this is such a sweet film. I'm here with the writer and the lead actor of it. Everybody knows him. He probably needs no introduction. Paul Reiser, and the director of the film, Chris Cottam. Thanks for being with me, guys.
Thank you, Leo. Leo Brady sounds like a fictitious name in an Elmore James, not Elmore James, Elmore Leonard novel.
Yeah,
Leo Brady.
I'm named after my grandfather, Leo Brady, who was a playwright and a writer. He wrote novels and he taught theater at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. So his first book, The Edge of Doom, was turned into a noir film with Walter Pidgeon.
Wow.
Now I'm intimidated.
So there's a lot of history there on my side of the family with cinema and acting and all that stuff.
Oh, wow. No pressure on you whatsoever.
Yeah. So my first question is typically an icebreaker question that I like to ask, and both of you can give your answers, but can either of you name a movie or an experience that you had with movies that made you say, this is what I want to do? I want to be an actor. I want to be a director. Go ahead.
Chris.
You go first, Paul.
Well, my journey really, it started with stand-up, and I was always planning and drawn to stand-up comedy. So my idols growing up were, George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Mel Brooks, and comics, not actors.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it's such a singular thing. It's you on stage, it's you writing, it's all you. But what actually opened my eyes and gave me clarity when I was in college, I was in a little production of Guys and Dolls. And I say little, it wasn't theater department. It was just this sort of knucklehead dorm production.
Right.
And what I loved was the camaraderie and the ensemble and the fact that everybody was doing this together to make one thing. And that's very much what movie making is. There's such a collection of wonderful, talented people making this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, mine was...
Chris is walking out of a car. Look how cool he is.
When I was about 7, my dad made the mistake of showing me the movie Deer Hunter. And it was one of those things at the end that was so... When Christopher Walken, I don't want to give it away if you've not seen it, meets his demise. As a young kid, I couldn't get over how much it had affected me.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I was like, I couldn't quite make the difference between what was fact and what was fiction. And that something that I was seeing on this little box was making me feel so sort of upset. And it was from that point onwards that I just thought, oh, this is incredible. You can actually make something that's make-believe and you can move people to that extent. And I think it's the same with comedy as well. Mine just happened to be a really horrific Vietnam War movie.
Right. That's certainly a memorable one, and that will put you on quite a trajectory of what movies that you want to make or what you want to see.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, thankfully I got into comedy, but that was the thing that first started me. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
because you could have watched the film and said, "Boy, I want to be a soldier, Daddy," but you didn't.
It's close.
I want to be a Viet Cong.
Well, it's interesting too, because for you, Paul, it begins, as you said, it begins with stand-up. But I watched an interview that you gave, and you talked about this career moment when you found yourself getting cast in Barry Levinson's diner, which happened almost by accident. I mean, like, when that sort of happened for you, did you feel like, okay, fate or luck has a lot to do with this as well?
Yeah. That wasn't me deciding to be an actor. That was somebody else inviting me to become an actor. I think all of us doing stand-up in those days had in the back of our minds, sometimes casting directors come into the club and maybe they'll put you in a pilot and maybe, or, a TV show, maybe you'll be in a movie, but that was not the goal. That was sort of the icing on the cake. So, and that was one of those things, and it was indeed an accident. My friend was going up for an audition, and I happened to be. We had plans that day. We were going to go out to lunch and hang out. They said, "Well, come with me. I have to drop off this picture at a casting office." And I was waiting outside the office for him, and the casting director said, "You're next." I went, "No, I'm not here." And I tried very hard to bow out of it, and she insisted I come back. And 2 weeks later, I'm in Baltimore making Diner. I'm going, I don't know what this is. But and I was so stunned and naive and uninformed that it was all new to me. And it wasn't until it came out, and I thought, oh, so that little thing where we were just talking, that when you shoot it beautifully and you edit beautifully, that's a movie. So that was, and talking about luck. I mean, I could have stepped into any office, but to make a movie, be involved in a movie that was that special and that remembered and that pivotal, really, so stylized. And Barry Levinson's first movie, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in that cast, including yourself, has had massive trajectories, massive careers. It's amazing.
And it was basically the first for all of us. I mean, Kevin Bacon had been a little bit in Animal House, and Danny Stern, I made a movie. Mickey Rourke, I think, had been in one movie. Yeah, it was Ellen Barkin.
Yep. Well, but before we dig into the problem with people, I would be a fool if I didn't ask Paul a question about Aliens, because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's my favorite series of all time.
I don't know if Aliens needs the promotion at this point.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Well, I was going to say to you too,
it's doing pretty good without us.
Well, yeah, but I was going to say too,
ahead,
like, watching your performance in The Problem with People as well. It's like you play such a kind dude, but like that movie in Aliens, and you've talked about that collaborative process in that film, but that was kind of like the only movie I've seen you in, or even a piece of work where like you've genuinely been the bad guy. Like you were kind of the character that cared more about the business than the people. You
say bad guy. I say misunderstood. But I joked about this for years, but I kind of do believe. I don't think he got on that mission and said, "I'm going to kill everybody." And I think there were some steps, and maybe we'll find out someday if they ever go back and go, he actually had a good reason, but then it went bad.
Right.
And that's sort of, so, but I mean, I've enjoyed, I did, other, in Red Oaks was the show on Amazon, and he was originally written as just this abrasive prick. And I thought, well, can we find something else? And let's show that he really loves his wife and he takes care of his daughter. It's like, oh, so nobody's all evil. I mean, we've seen some people lately that are, but in general, but that's the thing that's at the heart of Problem with People that Chris Cottam directed so beautifully.
Yeah.
These guys are good guys. They're both good people, and they're starting off with literally the best of intentions. Can we make peace between our family? And as an emblematic, way to show how people can make peace. Let's start with our family. Okay. And then one misstep leads to another, and then they triple over themselves. Like, well, that's what people do. They probably mean well, but can't get out of their own way.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too here. Chris, tell me about sort of this great collection of actors that you brought on for this project. Specifically, you've got Jane Levy, you've got Colm Meaney, you've got Paul. What was the process of gathering all of them and making sure it all fit together to tell this story?
Well, I mean, gathering them was a great casting process, because there's a couple of names in there, which is Des Keogh and Niall Buggy, who play the old, and Sheila Flitton as well.
Yeah.
Oscar movie Sheila Flitton. Let's not forget. There's a real heritage in that cast that we hope sort of shows to Beyond Island, because those guys are legends there, as is Tom. I mean, Tom, I think, is the grandfather of Ireland, someone called him.
Yeah.
And just having the chance to get those actors together and to get them in what's fundamentally like a little ensemble piece, I felt very, very lucky. And I was just hoping that when Sheila also appears in Banshee's movie, I just hope that, oh, it's her. Oh, I love her, because Sheila's just utterly adorable. And so when you've got these sort of Irish legends, and then you've got, like, I get to work with Paul Reiser and Colm Meaney, you really do have a super strong cast there. And I think you can't really, well, I certainly can't imagine anyone else playing that role that Joel Meany plays. I can't imagine who else would do it. So the movie wouldn't work without him. And obviously it works for because he wrote it, and that's who, you know, there is a bit, and Paul won't like me saying this, there's a bit of Barry and Paul, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and Paul too, talk about that writing process with your co-writer Wally Marzano Lesnovich. I mean, the two of you
Nicely said.
Yeah, the two of you sort of come up with this idea. I mean, this feels like a very universal story in many ways, but like as you said, it's about having forgiveness and people coming together, setting differences aside. Is this personal to you, or is there
well, yeah, it was a really lovely process. I had this idea literally since '82, since I first saw Local Hero. I had wanted to make my comparable movie. I wanted to go over to Ireland, and I don't know when it changed from Scotland to Ireland, but yeah. I had been to Ireland in the '90s and loved it, and just had been wanting to go back. So I've been sitting, not particularly actively writing, thinking about this, and then I said to somebody, I said, I should probably write. Maybe I should need to write this with somebody. And somebody introduced me to Wally. I'd never met him, and we hit it off. And all we had was New York guy goes over to Ireland. Why? And that's really all we had. And then we slowly started saying, well, maybe it's family. Maybe there's something that they find, and maybe there's a piece of land that he's entitled to. And when we sort of backdoored into like, oh, maybe this is sort of a paradigm for something bigger. And the opening scene where the old man is watching all the horrific conflicts in the world, and going, what's the problem with people? Why can't we all get along, damn it? And it's like, well, that's actually quite rich. So that's the heart of the movie, but it's a very light and optimistic, uplifting, hopefully, movie.
Yeah.
But we sort of backdoored into these things, and it was a very interesting process. As I said, we didn't have it from the start, but loved how we did it. And going back to the casting, there's such serendipity, because some of the people, Colm is like, well, of course, Colm Meaney would be the guy to play this. But I remember we were looking at playing Anya, and we had a couple of wonderful choices, and Sheila Flinton was like, I don't know. I'm not sure she could do it, but God, there's something so intriguing about her. And Chris and I both said, we don't know why, but let's jump into this pool. And then she lit up the screen and was the joy of the set. I mean, she was just, she's 89, and she was just dancing to Elvis music every day. We went, what planet are we on? We're in beautiful settings in Ireland, and this 89-year-old woman is dancing to Elvis, and the crew was just great. And, Sheila McAvoy, Lucianne McAvoy, who plays Fiona in the movie, the woman who's the barkeeper. We just read on Zoom like we're doing now, and Chris and I both went, yes, that's her. I mean, we had looked at many, but we just, yes, that's it. And it was from the day one. And Jane Levy, I had worked with Jane, but never acted with her. She was she starred in a show that I wrote a few years ago, and I was so intrigued. I thought she was just so powerfully moving. There's a little scene where she doesn't even have any lines, where she just picks up the phone and she gets teary-eyed, and I cry every time I watch that scene. I go, I don't know what it is about her, but she is such a powerful actress.
Yeah, she's very magnetic on screen. She's really, you can't, you sort of, it's a bit of a cliche, but you can't take your eyes off it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So we had to work really hard down to the last minute to get her, because she was very busy, and we had a very narrow window where she was free, and we refigured our shooting schedule, frankly, to get her. And like, she came on a Sunday and worked on a Monday, and thank God we did that. And sometimes you have to just really just fight for what you want.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned a couple of things when talking about the cast, about just like sort of the happiness that came out of just working with everybody. There is a genuine sense of community, and maybe it's like the cynic in me, and you even talked about the beginning of the movie where it's like all the bad stuff going along. This movie, you guys could have tipped it into like almost the ridiculous, where your character and Colm's character do, terrible acts against each other, or they're just downright like mean and ferocious towards one another in this dispute that they have. but they genuinely like have sort of a sense of kindness to them, both characters, where they're never going to take it too far. Did you guys sort of debate about that? I mean, was there like a thought like, oh, if we take it to this level, now it's like a slapstick comedy and it doesn't work, but instead you guys kind of like toe the line and it becomes this genuine and kind-hearted film, right?
I hope. Yeah. I think we pushed it as far as we felt comfortable doing, because they are doing some atrocious things to each other that they're both instantly embarrassed about and shamed, but they did them. And oh boy, maybe. And so I think that's a pretty common thing for people, is like, we all want to be good people. We all have, myriad flaws, and we fall short daily, if not hourly. I mean, how many times a day do we go, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I was a little harsh with the kids. Gee, I shouldn't have said, I could have done better. And so these are two guys who start off with this very noble thing. The father says, make peace in the family. Okay, how do you do that? So this is problem of the world, writ small, like, okay, here's two guys, they should be able to do it. And so it is, and Chris responded, when we first met, and he really responded to the silliness of and it is slapsticky, that these two guys are very civilized guys, but they're doing some infantile stuff.
right.
It's the pettiness. What I really like about it is it's the pettiness and the fragileness of the human ego. Is that no one wants really someone else to get someone over them, even if it's as silly as Kieran thinking that Barry is with Fiona or whatever it might be. There's a lot of sort of little fragile male ego bits there, which I really enjoyed about it. Because I think,
it's also. Go. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think Paul and Colin were just brilliant at those little nuances of getting under each other's skin. That's what I really enjoyed about the performances.
Yeah.
Well, also, what's funny, to me, the thing that always makes me laugh is tough guys being gentle or vulnerable, even if it's against their own will. And Colm Meaney is such a force of nature, and he's there's one scene where he hugged me. I went, this guy is solid. He's just rock. Yeah. And if he wanted to throw you across the lake, he could. But when you see these little cracks in him feeling badly about having misbehaved, and Barry's thing is, my character is like, I got the skills. I'm a big time New York guy, and I think that's part of what drives Cole's character. Is like, oh, the big New York guy is going to come in here, and I'll show you we're not so dumb. Our little, we're not some little bumpkins. Yeah. And so their egos and their identities are wrapped up. But to me, and there's, we talk about pettiness. My favorite moment of the movie, one of my favorite moments, when somebody calls him petty, and he just goes, "That's the thing that stung him most." The character is, I don't think I'm petty. It's like, you're like the president of petty.
Yeah. I think that's where it comes from, that pettiness, and you just see his shoulders drop. It's like, oh, I'm a little boy who's just being told I'm not.
Well, last question for both of you. This whole process of making this film, from the beginning when you two sort of connected to bringing Chris on the project, to now with the film making its premiere at the Austin Film Festival, how have you felt your relationship has grown from beginning to now?
Christopher?
I'm going to take myself off mute. Look at him there. Look at a little blush cheeks. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's been a little bit of a fairy tale for me, because obviously I knew and loved Paul as a performer, and then when I got to know him, and to broaden it out beyond the sort of industry, his family as well, is that something like this can only really be made if you are willing to work together and sort of be friends together, because you can't get it made any other way. We're not in a sort of tough business. Right, okay, let's do it. We're gonna kick it. It's like, we'd love to make this film. How can we make this possible? And you can only really do that with positive friendship, I think. I'm sure someone will tell me different. But so the whole process,
people have done it.
And then making the film, and then seeing, this is the lovely sort of icing on the cake. it's been a sort of wonderful experience, and I've come out of it with like a proper friend, and again, that's that's kind of rare.
Yeah.
So I'm very appreciative of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fairy tale, is kind of right. You know, Chris, I had seen a bunch of Chris's work, and I thought, I don't know what exactly. I just thought it was funny and stylistic and beautiful and smart. And he came over to my house. He had read the script and responded to it. And you know, nothing a writer likes better than going, "I love your script. Oh, tell me more." And but it was, you know, the things that he responded to, that he circled, were never the main thing. They were the main things too, but they were like, I love this little thing that's not even in the script, but it's in the script directions or in the stage direction. These little moments, and went, oh, this guy gets it. So from literally, you know, we fell in love from the get-go. And then we started talking about this pre-COVID. So then we were, you know, didn't have an opportunity to make it. So we had a long time to talk about it. And I mean, reality is, I never even thought about this. We've never had a moment of conflict. I mean, there were times that, you know, Chris would go, I think you're not going to like, I go, yeah, you're right. Let's change that. Or I would be insistent, and Chris would, you know, it was, and there were, you know, Chris, to his credit, you know, certainly gave me leeway, because I wrote it for me to be in, and I was maybe overprotective, but Chris had fresh eyes, and also he has such preparation and such detail in the world that I know nothing about. I don't know how you actually make this look like that, but go. And then he did. So it's been a beautiful collaboration. And yeah, and our wives have become dear friends, and it's just been a joy. And this is, you know, this weekend, I mean, I'm sure Chris feels the same way. I'm kind of bubbling with excitement because we've not shown this to anybody. We had one screening for about 10 friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of testing or, you know, audiences like, we know what we're doing, and if we're wrong, we're wrong. But we think this is quite lovely, and we're very proud of this film. So to hear, you know, and we've heard people who've just seen it now, I'm just aglow with this feeling of, oh, we weren't wrong at all, Chris. This is a lovely film, and it's funny. And the things that we thought maybe were too subtle, no, people are getting it. And so it's exciting to put something out in the world that we have been working on for so long.
Awesome. All right, Paul Reiser, Chris Cottam, thank you so much for talking with me today. The film, The Problem with People, will be playing at the Austin Film Festival this Saturday, October 28th. Thank you again, guys, for being with me today.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Leo.
Awesome. Take care.
Pleasure.